Hi, my name is Victor Leja, and this is the Practicum Overview. So where I did my hours was in the facility, physical therapy, and it was called Elite Athlete. So what they do here is he specializes in orthopedics, sports injuries, recovery, but that's just a small part of what he does. That's just a specialization, what he enjoys doing most. But we had patients, ranging from elderly to a little bit younger, middle school to high school to some, NBA like D League, paraprofessional athletes, if you will. And the department that I was working at mainly was in the front, the management center, if you will. We did a lot of medical billing, um, insurance, things of that nature in the office. A lot of it was shadowing the actual person that oversees the operations. Since it is still fairly a startup, there is somebody in charge, but it wasn't necessarily a manager just yet. And so that's mainly where I spent my time, but I was also able to be hands-on experience with the physical therapist in the room, whether it be aiding in um, exercises or setups or whatever that might be. There's a lot of things that go into this and a lot of different factors in rooms. And so some of the things that besides medical billing and the assessing that I had to do was you know small things that you would do in any other medical office, like overviews, and a patient comes in, the doctor very thorough about checking things that might have been an issue last time, checking up on them, and if they sustained or if they felt any different for the future. But if last week my left foot didn't hurt, but this week it does, that's something that he would take into consideration and see if there was something that we could change via his therapy, or if it might have been a new injury sustained and that might be something else that we might need to work on. Because it's very important to have all aspects covered in a really in any sports situation. And so that's something the doctor was very thorough about, and that's the majority of where my time was spent. So there was a couple of projects that I took on, two in particular. One of them was a needs analysis, and basically, with my knowledge and love for basketball, he really asked me to do a needs analysis for basketball. So in the needs analysis, it's basically giving him the information as to what each player and position would play and what they would need, um, maybe as a strength over other things, so that when a player does come in and they say, I can play this position, or this is what position I play, he can better tailor the recovery and everything that they have to do that maneuvers around their position. And since there is five different positions, there is five different needs analysis for that sport. And so with this, as a point guard, you would need vision, uh, hip rotation, because if you have to pivot, you have to open up your hips on defense, and that's something that would need to be extremely important for a point guard because you're always at the forefront and at the front line of the defensive end. And so that was one thing that I wrote down, and that was one thing that when his clients would come in, or if he had a client later on that came in and they said I played, point guard position, he knew that this could be something he looks at, maybe helps them with, and this increases his value over time. So if they come in, going back to the foot injury, they come in for a foot injury and he helps them with hip mobility and then they feel better. And that's the way that he increases his value, so that makes them want to come back to his office. And that's what, and I really enjoy that aspect because it really was a sense of providing value versus providing revenue. And of course, revenue is important, but if you're not providing value, then odds are that revenue is also not going to be there. So by taking care of them, they take care of you in a sense, and that was really something I enjoyed. So needs analysis was probably my favorite project because I did have to cover a sport that I was interested in and something that I liked. And the other project was their social media. Being a fairly new company, as I mentioned, the social media was still something that they really weren't into and didn't cover a whole lot. So with my time there, I was able to get with the person who runs the office and the person who was kind of helping them set everything up. I set up their Facebook page and they had an Instagram, and I think they also had a TikTok. But that one was just showing exercises and variations of things that they could do. It's particularly, a lot of people are quarantined at home, So at home, you might have a kettlebell, and so that's where we took TikTok. You might have a kettlebell. This is the exercise you can do if you have mini bands. You tie around your hips. Usually, for example, if you play basketball, once again, you can work on with the mini bands on hip mobility and opening, extension, and flexion, a lot of things like that. Strengthening of the core. You have jump ropes. You have speed ropes. You have a lot of other things that you can use at home, and that's mainly what we use the TikTok for. The Instagram was a hybrid of both, so we would still put the TikTok videos on there and social media. It would also be questions and answers, things that might be related to something that somebody asked. Maybe a patient came in and they had, what can I do to help back pain? And he really went over the back pain, knee, and spinal flexion. So really rotate mobility in the upper torso. And so a customer, or a patient, should I say, had this question, and he was able to answer that and then post it on social media. So if somebody else has that question, or if somebody else just happens to come upon that video, whether somebody else liked it or shared it or whatever the case was, then this was a new potential patient they had. If this person did have um, other issues or whatever it may be, and that's what brings them to the page, and then they see the value, and this is all free value too. Then that gives them a sense of comfort and more of confidence that this physical therapist is, he knows what he's talking about essentially. And so that was what we really used the Instagram for. And on Facebook was really the primary, because right now there's currently more Facebook pages and accounts than there is people in the world. Now, some of this may be due to a lot of people having multiple accounts, or you forget your password for whatever the case might be. But at the end of the day, there is still more Facebook accounts than people, and so this was the most powerful tool that we had. And that would also include videos, questions, answers, its contact information, scheduling, uh, hours, and everything else. And what we were able to do with this one was start a community. Now there's a new tab with community on there, and now people who follow the page can also answer questions to one another. So what this does is essentially create just that. It's a sense of community. So other people who have issues who had come to him, or people who might just be looking for recommendations, we say, he did great, he helped me with this, and other people have similar questions, so he's able to come in and also help them. And in the same breath, these people are interacting, so it gives them a sense of just that, the community. You build friendships on there, and some people on there did continue to make conversations, that they did end up adding each other as friends. And what if they were friends or not is beside the point, but they ended up conjugating with other people who maybe they wouldn't have normally. And this sense of community is extremely important, because it not only provides value to him but to them. So you made a friend, you're able to have your questions answered, you got recommendations on a physical therapist. There's a lot that goes into it. With my project proposal, I did have the whole functioning in the front office aspect to it, and I think in this role I was able to fulfill most of that, especially because it is still a very new facility. So I was in a sense able to help them build that up. So I was there from the start, and sometimes it may be better to go into an already fully functioning facility, but in this case I was able to really learn a lot in terms of starting it up, teaching people, learning things myself, obtaining knowledge, their systems, everything else, just like everybody else was at that moment. So it really helped to be there in the it's not brand new to opening phase, should I say, but it is still very new to the point where there's still learning to be done. There's still procedures to be learned and policies to follow and all these things that people do need to do. And I was able to really witness that firsthand. So more than the projects and more than anything else, the firsthand experience in basically the stressful life that is to come as a healthcare manager, and of any healthcare facility for that matter, whether it already be going or whether it's just starting up. The stressful mental stress demand was very apparent, because there was a lot that went into it. There was one problem but 15 different moving pieces, and what worked for this situation didn't work for 10 other situations, or maybe if you tailor to one person, there's five other people who I didn't tailor to. So there was really a lot of maneuvering, and it was a giant puzzle, if you will. And that was the most beneficial thing to me, was a lot of the experience that I gained over being in the front office, working with people, different personalities as well. Um, and that's very apparent from day one. Everybody has a different personality. Everybody was, yes, kind, but personality wise, it was different. So being in the shoes of the person in charge, which in this case was a manager, I suppose, just not the facility manager, it was just a team manager, or team lead, if you will. Um, and being basically shadowing them, and following them around, and seeing them stress just as much as I, definitely solidified the fact that this experience was very, very, very valuable to me.